Have you ever noticed that the higher someone climbs in life, the more it feels like they're not even playing the same game the rest of us were told to play? Growing up, you were probably taught some version of this script. Be honest, work hard, wait your turn, don't rock the boat, follow the rules. Yet somehow, the people who end up at the top are the ones bending those very rules, finding hidden doors that no one mentioned, and presenting polished smiles while the reality behind the curtain is nothing like the story we were sold. If you're being honest with yourself, you've probably wondered at some point, am I the fool here? Did I buy into the sanitized version of life while those in power are operating from an entirely different set of instructions? Machiavelli wouldn't hesitate to say yes. That's exactly what happened. Society often functions on two parallel sets of rules. The public rules are the ones we're all told to follow, the ones plastered on posters, preached about in school, and shared in motivational LinkedIn posts. Then there are the private rules, the unspoken codes that the powerful actually abide by. Today isn't about turning you into some comic book villain. It's about understanding a deeper truth so you can stop sabotaging yourself with limiting beliefs about how the world works. You can play a smarter game without compromising your integrity. Let's start with that first rule you were taught. Always follow the rules. On paper, it sounds virtuous. Obey traffic signs, pay taxes, stand in line. And sure, for maintaining basic order in society, that's essential. But look closely at what powerful people do. They don't follow rules blindly. They study who created those rules, why they exist, and where the loopholes lie. And when those rules don't serve their purposes, they figure out how to modify or work around them. Machiavelli's princes didn't passively abide by laws. They shaped and reinvented them. When a regulation threatened their survival, they didn't shrug and say, "Well, those are the rules. Guess this is it for me." No, they maneuvered, negotiated, and adapted. Meanwhile, most of us were conditioned to ask, "Am I allowed to do this?" Powerful people ask far more strategic questions. Who is benefiting from this rule? Does this rule serve my goals? The message here isn't to break laws. It's to stop treating every rule or societal expectation like it was handed down on stone tablets. Think about your job for a moment. There's the official rule book. Follow protocol, use the proper channels, stay patient, and wait for the promotion cycle. And then there's what high achievers actually do. They build direct relationships with decision makers. They volunteer for visible projects that might technically fall outside their current role. They solve problems proactively without waiting for permission. Society says stay in your lane. Power says learn where all the lanes lead, and then step into the one where things actually happen. Here's a practical mindset shift to try. Next time you hit what feels like a wall, a rule or obstacle you assume you can't get past, stop and evaluate. Ask yourself, is this an actual rule or just tradition? Who benefits from me following it? Is there a respectful legal way to approach things differently? You'll be surprised at how often you discover that what seemed like a locked door wasn't even locked in the first place. You just never thought to try the handle. Now let's talk about another popular belief society loves to hammer into us. Wait your turn. Be patient. Good things come to those who wait. It sounds wise, right? In practice, good things tend to come not to those who wait, but to those who ask, position themselves strategically, and push forward where opportunities arise. Machiavelli understood something uncomfortable but true about human nature. People are busy and generally self-focused. They aren't wandering around trying to identify quiet, deserving individuals who haven't spoken up for themselves yet. We're told that hard work and silence will get us noticed. Let your results speak for themselves. But here's reality. Results don't talk. People do. And people can forget about you if you don't make yourself known. The powerful don't sit around hoping someone will recognize their potential. They create their own opportunities. They voice their ideas in meetings instead of waiting for someone else to notice them. They pitch proposals before there's even an official process in place. They don't wait to be invited. They send the email, make the call, and take steps toward what they want. If you were raised to be a good kid who plays by the rules and stays in line, this might feel uncomfortable at first. After all, you were taught not to be pushy, to wait your turn and trust that someone will eventually recognize your worth. But here's a sobering truth. If you want, powerful individuals are incredibly calculated about what they reveal, when they reveal it, and to whom. Machiavelli emphasizes the importance of appearances, not in a superficial or performative way, but as a deliberate strategy. If your every thought and intention is as transparent as an open book, you make yourself vulnerable and easy to exploit. Society often urges us to speak our minds, whereas power advises, be selective about what you disclose. Observe the communication patterns of CEOs, politicians, or skilled leaders. They don't lie every time they speak, but they're careful not to expose every fear, doubt, or half-formed idea. They plan their words. They maintain discretion. Sometimes we overshare from an earnest desire for authenticity or to feel understood. However, if everyone in your orbit has full insight into your worries, aspirations, finances, or relationship struggles, you've effectively handed them the keys to manipulate your emotions. So, how can you strike a balance between being authentic and setting personal boundaries without coming off as insincere? A useful principle to follow is, be truthful, but don't bear everything. You can be honest without exposing your entire reality. Respond to what's asked without loading the conversation with unnecessary vulnerabilities. For instance, if negotiating a salary and asked about your current earnings, you don't have to disclose an exact number like you're under legal obligation. Instead, craft a response like, I'm looking for something in the range of X based on this role's responsibilities. This isn't about dishonesty. It's about refraining from overexposing yourself in situations where strategic withholding is smarter. Another rule to consider is rethinking the need to always be liked by everyone. Most of us are conditioned from a young age to avoid conflict, maintain harmony, and strive for universal approval. The world teaches us that being likable makes life easier. Machiavelli would strongly disagree. He argued that being respected carries far more weight than being loved, because love often fades when people aren't getting what they want from you. Respect, however, endures. It's rooted in understanding boundaries and knowing which lines won't be crossed. Truly powerful people understand this well. If you crave universal approval, you relinquish control to others. Being willing to tolerate short-term disapproval to achieve longer-term goals is more impactful. It allows them to make decisions, even unpopular ones, when necessary, and prioritize their values over pleasing everyone. You've probably experienced this dynamic on a smaller scale. The person at work who says yes to every request often ends up stretched thin, feeling resentful while earning less respect. Meanwhile, someone who occasionally says no or challenges bad ideas might earn a difficult label, but is generally taken more seriously. Reflect on a relationship where you're constantly tiptoeing around someone's feelings, afraid to express yourself honestly out of fear they might disapprove. Ask yourself, has trying to be liked at all costs brought any real benefits? If the answer is frustration, resentment, or feeling unappreciated, it might be worth experimenting with a new approach, one that embraces clarity over compliance. Start small. Begin to assert yourself with statements like, "I see it differently," "That doesn't work for me," or "I'm not comfortable with that." It might feel risky in the moment, but ultimately it shifts the paradigm from self-sacrifice for others' comfort to mutual respect grounded in honesty. Finally, there's the belief that you must treat everyone equally all the time. While treating people with basic dignity is non-negotiable from a moral standpoint, equal energy and engagement are unrealistic and unwise when it comes to relationships. Society preaches fairness, that everyone deserves the same from you, but spreading your energy evenly across all connections often leaves you drained and unfulfilled. Powerful people understand this and prioritize accordingly. They treat everyone politely, but reserve their deeper investments, time, trust, and energy, for a select few who truly matter or add value to their lives. Machiavelli advocated for understanding alliances, knowing not everyone around you deserves equal access. Some are loyal allies. Others may serve a purpose only temporarily. Some are untrustworthy, and some may even be detrimental to your well-being. And then there are the few rare relationships worth nurturing deeply because they consistently provide mutual support and trust. Most of us blur these distinctions in an effort to avoid seeming rude or dismissive. For example, think about the difference between two types of friends. One who only reaches out when they need something, frequently cancels plans, and never checks in on you, versus another who's consistently supportive, keeps your confidence, and is transparent with you. If you treat two vastly different people the same, it's not kindness, it's carelessness with your energy. A shrewd but healthy approach is to adjust your level of access to others. This doesn't have to involve cutting people off dramatically. It can simply mean responding more slowly and with less emotional involvement to those who consistently drain you. It may look like turning down invitations from individuals who bring chaos into your life, or investing more time in those who have proven their loyalty, discretion, and respect. Basic decency remains for everyone, but not everyone should have equal access to your table or your energy. The sixth rule emphasizes work hard and keep your head down. Promising success will follow. This mantra, often repeated, suggests that sheer grinding will eventually lead to rewards. But powerful people don't just work hard, they work strategically in spaces where their efforts are visible to those who can create real opportunities. Niccolo Machiavelli might argue that fortune favors not only the bold, but also the prepared. Simply being diligent isn't enough. True effectiveness lies in understanding leverage. Two individuals may both dedicate the same number of hours to work, yet their results can differ drastically. One might be stuck in low-impact tasks that go unnoticed, while the other is fostering relationships, mastering unique skills, or positioning themselves alongside decision-makers. Society values effort, but power emerges when effort is paired with leverage. Reflect regularly. Where are you expending energy that doesn't meaningfully advance your life? Where can smart systems, valuable skills, or pivotal relationships replace raw effort? Perhaps at work, you're obsessing over perfecting minor details no one appreciates while avoiding a presentation that could reshape your professional image. In your personal life, you might be overextending yourself for people who wouldn't do the same for you, neglecting your health, financial literacy, or future. Start small. Weekly, identify one high-leverage action deserving of your focus. It could involve learning a valuable skill that increases your indispensability, mending an important relationship, or creating something reusable like a system or template. Such actions might not seem exciting now, but over time, they help transform you from simply hardworking to undeniably powerful. The seventh rule centers on respecting authority, but not blindly. From a young age, we're taught to obey figures of authority, the teacher, the boss, the expert, but there's a fine line between respect and submission. Truly powerful people know how to engage with authority thoughtfully. They respect competence, but aren't bowled over by titles alone. They test boundaries, negotiate terms, and challenge norms discreetly yet assertively. Machiavelli observed rulers who navigated structures of power with careful tact. They respected institutions like the church and nobility, but knew when to bypass them to achieve necessary outcomes. This isn't about confrontational defiance. It's about recognizing an authority's limitations and finding pathways toward better solutions. For example, you might acknowledge your manager's leadership, but still identify areas where their decisions can be improved. Or you may love and respect your parents while leading a life they don't entirely understand. You can honor laws yet advocate for their reform if they're unjust. The key lies in asking better questions. What's the primary objective behind this rule or policy? Could there be alternative approaches to achieve the same goal? How do I introduce these ideas without appearing rebellious? By respectfully engaging with authority rather than passively accepting every directive, you transition from being a subject to becoming an influential participant. The eighth rule warns against staying in your lane, a subtle control mechanism society uses to maintain predictability. It nudges you to stick within the limits of your social class, career path, personality type, or identity. Don't step out of line, don't attempt reinvention, but powerful individuals ignore these constraints entirely. History proves it. Dynasties crumble and rise from nothing. Fortunes are won and lost overnight, and roles that once seemed unchangeable morph into something new. Machiavelli witnessed firsthand how unpredictability shapes lives and governance. Refusing to be confined by societal expectations is often the first step in shaping a future of genuine significance. The ones who survive and thrive in life are those who adapt, even when society insists, "That's not who you are." Today, that adaptability might look like an engineer becoming an entrepreneur, a reserved individual stepping into leadership, a working-class kid venturing into investments, or a stay-at-home parent launching a business at 45. The narrative urging you to stay in your lane serves those who benefit from you remaining small and predictable. Stepping outside that narrative disrupts their sense of order, so expect resistance. Friends might dismissively say, "That's not you." Family could joke, "So you think you're a big deal now?" Colleagues might roll their eyes, but those who truly understand power anticipate this pushback and keep moving forward. Take one small step out of your assigned role. If you're usually quiet, speak up once during a group discussion. If you're known as the dependable, stable one, take a calculated risk. Not a reckless one based on impulse, but one informed by thought and research. If you're seen as creative but disorganized with money, dedicate time to learning basic financial skills instead of wearing that weakness like a badge of identity. Each time you act outside the predetermined script others have for you, you train both yourself and them to recognize your capacity for growth and change. This can be daunting. Questioning the rules, being selectively honest, taking risks, standing prepared to face criticism, these are no small feats. You don't need to overhaul your life in an instant. That's not realistic. Even Machiavelli would caution that drastic changes often provoke alarm and resistance. Gradual, deliberate shifts are far more strategic. Begin by challenging the neutrality of the rules you've been taught. Many of them weren't established to empower or help you become your authentic self. They exist to maintain order and keep systems functioning smoothly. That doesn't mean all rules need discarding. Some, like avoiding harm or dishonesty, form worthy ethical foundations. But the subtler ones that condition you to play small and remain agreeable, those are the very ones ignored by the powerful, and you can start ignoring them too, wisely and strategically. Here's a practical exercise. Write down one rule from your upbringing that now feels limiting. Maybe it's don't talk about money, never question authority, work always comes first, or always be nice. Then ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this rule always true? Next, who benefits when I follow it without question? Lastly, how could I test its opposite in a small, low-risk way? For example, if the rule discourages conversations about money, try discussing salaries or budgeting with a trusted friend. If it's about constant niceness, practice directness once without over-sugarcoating your words. You don't need to burn your life down in rebellion. A few carefully designed experiments are enough to prove that you can explore different paths without unraveling everything you've built. Machiavelli wrote in a world of betrayals, court intrigues, and power struggles, a brutal landscape in many ways, but his observations on human behavior resonate even today. People are still driven by self-interest, appearances remain crucial, and power continues to consolidate quietly behind the scenes, while others argue about surface-level norms. You don't need to become ruthless to navigate this reality. You just need to stop being naive. Understand the official rules where they make sense and respect them appropriately. But pay closer attention to how people truly operate versus what they say. Notice who climbs the ladder versus who gets complimented for their effort. Observe who is impervious to critique, not just who garners laughter in social settings. Watch for those whose ability to say no doesn't upend their worlds while others scramble for approval. The key truth underlying society's rules is this: they weren't created to protect your interests. They were designed to predict and constrain your actions. When you start thinking strategically, rather than blindly following these constructs, the entire game changes. You'll make mistakes along the way, sometimes staying silent when you should have spoken, or speaking up when quiet would have served better. That's part of the process. As you practice shifting from passive obedience to intentional decision-making, balancing ambition with integrity, you'll experience less frustration and confusion about others' progress, and more clarity about how things actually work. One day, you'll find yourself observing someone diligently playing by outdated brochure rules while you confidently navigate the real game, not perfectly or ruthlessly, but with awareness. And in that moment, you'll realize you've broken the cycle. Not ruthlessly, not perfectly, but awake.